Hi, Bettina.
Hello, I was muted.
Yes. How have you been?
Good, good. I love that weather this weekend.
Yes, wasn't that fabulous? I
Yeah,
heard the first red-winged blackbirds, and down in the valley when I went walking, I heard frogs.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, we saw the red-winged blackbirds too. Yeah, as we were walking the dog.
I have seasonal affective disorder, and I figure if I can live into February, then I'll live through the rest of the year.
Yeah,
It's just so hard, that dark few months.
yeah, yeah. So yesterday and the day before would have been so nice. Yeah, yeah.
So it looks like we're just waiting for Heather.
And Heather, she emailed me today, Marianne, that she's not able to join us. So we'll have to move
Okay.
forward without her. Thank you.
All right. So let's do a roll call. I see Bettina,
Yes. Mhm.
Debbie, Felicita,
Here.
Felicita, and Amy.
Here,
And this is
thank you.
Marianne, and we're all here. So Amy, do you want to share what we had come up with our project plan so far? And we had come up with a bunch of questions, and we're talking about sending that out to the agencies, so that we can start gathering information. And what we talked about is some of the questions we're asking, does it really matter if we know the answer or not? Because we're still going to go for full cost recovery no matter what. We're still going for living wage no matter what. We're still trying to come up with a easy way to do applications. So some of the things, it doesn't really matter what the agencies respond.
I'm just going to pull up the template that you sent to me, Marianne. And really what Marianne is talking about is the memos and PowerPoints that we've been asking for from the agencies for their presentations, and trying to find a way that we can collaboratively look at all of those responses. And really what we're thinking it might come down to is maybe a spreadsheet of us just putting in yes or no's for each agency, depending on the question. And then as we were talking about it, I just said, well, maybe we're asking too much of the agencies. Maybe we just need to send them a survey with yes, no questions. And then maybe once we have all their answers and we look at that comprehensively, we could request additional information if we needed it. So really what we're trying to do is see how we can put all of the agency's information together and look at that in one easy, comprehensive list. And so Marianne put this together. These were the first questions that we asked in January on the payment models that prioritize full cost recovery. And so she put in some of the questions here. I don't think it covers all of them, so I think we need to talk about that and just get the group's ideas on how we want to move forward. I see your hand, Felicita. Give me just 1 second. But I know that I also mentioned it to Mercedes, and she said she was really wanting this group, our Project Plan Subgroup, to put together some sort of recommendation for her so that we can collaboratively make a decision on how to move forward. So hopefully that makes sense. Please feel free, Felicita, to join in.
Just some initial thoughts. Based on the presentations that we had last month, a lot of the departments within the agencies have different ways that they handle each of these things. It's from one of my major takeaways was that there's a lot of um, uh, subjective decision making. So I don't think it can. I think it is possible to do it in a graph like this. I just think there's a lot more rows, and it does matter their answers because our solutions are going to have costs. And we need to be realistic about that. I think we know we have a sense of what we will be championing, of course, based on our own professional backgrounds. But it does matter. And I hope this wouldn't mean that we wouldn't have the presentations anymore, because I've really appreciated those. And I think it's a really good opportunity for folks who want to learn more, and can watch the recording later or watch live to get a level of detail that they haven't heard before. Thanks.
So, Amy, do you want to show through the tabs? Because we have different questions. This happens to be about payment methods, but we also have different questions based on different areas.
So the second tab is for the questions for February, the uniform application process. And I think these lend themselves more towards the yes or no questions, and that's where we came up with that idea. But as far as the additional tabs I created are for the upcoming meetings that we haven't prepared questions for them yet. So there's not any information here. It's just a template, really. But I did get this one started for February in hopes that maybe this is the way we want to comprehensively look at it. And we're just really coming up with ideas and brainstorming. So it's up to you guys on how we want to form this. There's not one way of doing it. We'd like to get your input and hear from you.
Amy, can you make that top row 3 so that the columns are thinner and the questions fit so that we can see everything on one page? Because I think there were maybe 8 or 10 questions.
Yes, I'll do that. Bettina, go ahead.
Yeah, I like the idea of having a table while we listen to them, so we can take some notes. I'm thinking if we have a spreadsheet, we also could use a comment function, if we want to make ourselves additional notes with that. So in a comprehensive report, we might add those comments in there if we're consolidating, our information. So that's what I'm thinking, because there might be more than just a yes and no, like for some departments.
So going back, Felicita, when you were talking about different departments within different agencies, what specifically were you talking about?
I don't have my notes from the last meeting with me, but based on the presentation, some of these departments, some of these agencies are ginormous, right? And they have different heads of each departments, and I'm not going to pretend to know the names of the departments. But my understanding was that it was clear there was a level of discretion at department heads around decisions of what we were hearing about, which was payment models. So I don't want to pick on anyone, but I don't think it's fair to ask a yes or no of an agency when there's a level of discretion that's allowed. And some grantees are hearing different things based on even the individual that they're working with.
All right, so this was the set of questions that we thought were being asked for February. And so what we thought is maybe each one of us could take 1 or 2 of these agencies and go back and fill the information out here to the best of our ability from the memos and the PowerPoints that they gave us. And if each one of us did 2 or 3 of these, then we would have it in some kind of form. Then we could send it out and say, is this accurate? Debbie?
I am happy to take my slice and help in any way possible. I am kind of thinking about Felicita's comments, and I think these are set up to be a pick list. And so if we have a great big agency like a DHS or an OHA, and in some portions they some program areas, maybe they do one of these things, and in another area they don't. Trying to think of how we could be consistent. Would we add like another line, like maybe say DHS, this program area does it this way, DHS, this program area does it a different way?
I think
that was
sounds
kind of a question and a suggestion.
I think that sounds like a good idea. And the other thing is, if we have a drawdown that has multiple answers, as opposed to just two, a yes or a no. I think a lot of these, and Debbie, correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of these have certain answers because they have certain funding sources from federal level.
I think that could be one reason. It may vary across the agency. I also think that there's just in some of these large agencies, there's some autonomy where perhaps consistency could be. We could find consistency, but it just has not been directed or managed in that way in the past. So I think it's both.
So if we could actually document that there was a certain agency that had 2 or 3 or 4 different processes, then when we were making our recommendations for things being more consistent, we would have examples.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that sounds right to me.
I think it would be a good place to start to just gather some of this information, because I know that there are several people that are thinking that we're not moving fast enough, that we're not going to be done. They're kind of freaking out about it. And if we can just show that we're working towards that direction and we've made this much progress and there is a plan going forward, that it's not all going to be just about education and process, that we're actually doing something in the background. Felicita?
Just for some clarity, so this document will be part of the project plan? Is that
I think
correct?
that's the plan. Is that correct, Amy?
I don't necessarily think it's part of the project plan. I think this is part of our work together to get a sense, get our arms around what our agency's doing and how can we apply that as we move forward. I think this is just a working document aside from the project plan. If you feel like we should add it, we can. It's evolving. It's going to be changing over time. And I think we want to get the project plan finished and get that one posted as final. And then this would become a working document for our team to use.
So what do we need to do today to finish the project plan? What can we do today?
So today I have combined all of your feedback and your comments, and I would like us to take a look at those comments and see what we want to accept. I didn't see anything in there that was anything that should cause conflict or that we'll want to talk about, but we might need to do that. So if you don't mind, let's go ahead and pull up the project plan and we can take a look at all the edits that were provided. So here I had just made an update to that we were making changes to the date, so that's not a big one. Let's scroll down to where I see the first edits here. I think these blue ones are Marianne's. So Marianne had made some edits to section 2 and 3, just to submit a report in the manner provided by ORS 192.245. That will include recommendations. I think it's just a little wordsmithing there.
Instead of that may include recommendations.
Okay. Everybody okay with that change? No objection there? Okay, we'll accept that one. And then, Marianne, I noticed you made some changes in the goals and measurements. Do you want to talk through those, what you were thinking here?
So originally it was kind of unclear why they were asking the same thing different ways, but it was because some was about grants and some was about contracts. So I was trying to use almost I was just trying to make it more easy to understand. Because I know Heather and I think it was Bettina both commented on the wordiness and the ability to understand. So I was trying to make it easier to understand. So
I see here you've called out that this goal is for grants and this one is for contracts, maybe to give that some clarity between the two pieces. It doesn't look like you really changed the content very much. It was just adding some call outs there to make it more clear. Does anyone have objection with that? Do we like those changes?
No objections. I think that makes sense, especially considering how these often get combined, confused. I think that'll, if we do this, it'll be even clearer to everyone. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
I think the same. It seems clarifying.
Okay. Let's keep moving then. Look at these additional changes here. Again, just calling out grant, contract on these, and then just adding bullets to help clarify. Marianne, I think that was your intentions here as well.
right, I was trying to set it into separate steps. Because a lot of it just said analysis documentation, but then what do we actually need to create? What do we actually need to organize? What do we actually need to standardize?
We'll give folks a minute to review. Please let me know if you see anything that you want to discuss.
The grant application steps and what is probably contract application steps. Is that what several departments shared last month about kind of like an FAQ guide that they had? Am I following that correctly, Marianne?
What agency was that?
I don't remember. There were I feel like OHA was setting some really good examples of internal and external policies. I get, maybe the question is, Marianne, can you the bullet point within grant identify and create recommended uniform grant application steps, and 2 columns down, create grant application steps document. Can you tell us more about that?
Well, the create grant application steps document would be what we would submit.
Our list of recommendations?
Right, it would be part of the recommendation. That would be part of the outcome of what we're doing. So I think the first one's the goal and the second one is how do we make the goal happen? So I think the
Yeah, I
first
can't see
column
the
is
top.
what's the goal? The second one is who is it? And the third one is, yeah, the outcome or measurement. So once we have a document that lays out, and I guess it's our recommendations for grant application steps, then that document would be that final. Debbie?
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking about, we are tasked to come up with a report of recommendations. These sound like tangible outcomes that actually our task force may not be able to, say, create standard grant agreement language document. Like our task force can't do that. We have to task the agencies to do it. And so I'm just getting a little hung up on, will our report recommend these types of things? Or are we expecting that by the time we publish our report, agencies will have also completed these recommendations? Sorry if that didn't make sense.
So
I think it made sense.
you're saying we could create them, so application steps document for recommendation?
I'm asking, let me try to do this again. I'm sorry, I'm not very clear. So I think the goal of the what we as a task force were asked to do is come up with to do the study and to submit a report of recommended actions. Some of these are worded as though the action is happening during our current task force period. And so I'm a little hung up on, when would we let agencies know that, hey, by the end of our task force period, we're not only going to do a report, but we want you working on this thing right now. And so I'm just wondering if these are if these are actions we want to put into our recommendation, or if we're truly asking agencies to begin working on it right now.
I guess I didn't understand that the agencies would be creating application steps. I thought we would create those from what we learned.
On that one, I think we could. But when I look at like standard grant agreement language, I'm not sure us on the task force kind of have that expertise, and we probably have to rely on, well, I guess our DOJ partner. I'm kind of thinking out loud here. Maybe we could come up with some suggested.
So would it be better to word it as ask DOJ to create a recommended standard grant agreement language document?
But wouldn't that be a recommendation? Not a measurement? I think I'm getting stuck in some of the language as well. Just gonna honor that.
All right, so what actually can we do as a task force? Are we not allowed to do anything?
I mean, my understanding is we are to do the research and make a list of recommendations. I think they will likely be pretty pointed of that, you know, a uniform application process across, here's the dream, across all state departments that directly ensure nonprofits have less admin requirements of them, and that state departments can easily access information across departments. Like, to me, that might be a recommendation, and it would come from a very informed place as a direct result of the next couple of months. Because I suppose it's in the realm of possibility that the departments come to us and they say there's absolutely no way that will ever happen. And so then it's a different conversation of, well, what do we have to do to get there? What has to change? How long will that take?
Bettina?
That's how my brain is approaching this.
Yeah, I'm similar. I'm just thinking we are mainly making recommendations, and then when it goes to the politicians, they can either, put it into some obligations for departments, and or the departments could voluntarily look at those and see, what are we going to do? But I see both. I would not see any changes other than voluntary ones by departments before we make a recommendation. But then afterwards, it really is up to probably both a political force to say, we are now requiring this for departments and whatever implementation timeline there is. Or, as we negotiate with departments on a more voluntary basis, like with NAO, we could say, can we do something without the obligation, because it makes good sense. And it doesn't need a legislator to tell us this.
So Debbie, how would you change that recommended uniform grant application steps? How would you change that to make it more clear?
I think what we could do, I'm looking at so our goal was to identify and create recommended uniform grant application steps. I suppose we could create a list of recommended inclusions in the steps, or I don't know. This one I'm hung up. I'm more hung up. Let me see here. I'm less hung up on the task force actually doing this one than on some of the others. This one, it feels a little like we could recommend that the agencies do something, but we could also just do it on this particular one. It's some of the other ones where I'm not feeling like we could actually do the work, and it would have to be the agencies.
All right, so I think if the feeling is possibly we should do it, then we should do it, because having too much mush everywhere, every way we turn and stepping in mush so we can't go forward is not helpful. So
Correct.
I would say anything that we feel strongly about, let's change. Anything that we don't, then let's leave. Clarify it however we can, but like with the standard grant agreement language, create a recommended standard grant agreement language document, create with DOJ a recommended standard grant agreement language document. I don't know.
So back to the previous one on the application steps document, I would add the word recommended. So create on the measurement side, create a recommended grant application steps document. On the next one, I feel like this one, having been on projects where we've tried to create common templates in the past, and Amy has too, I'm worried that if we set out to create this during our task force period, we may not land the plane. I think we might be better served to include contract terms, or like the pieces that we as a task force could come up with strong recommendations for, like maybe prompt payment language, clauses. Like if we had a list of recommended, these things must be included in the standard grant agreement language. I think we have a better possibility of being successful if we go about it that way.
So change that second, create a recommended standard grant agreement language document, change it to that, and then add around payment terms, payment method. I don't know. I don't know what to put there.
Yeah, that was just a suggestion. And there's probably more things. What about recommend that state agencies create a common grant agreement that includes provisions as follows, and then like a colon. I don't know what all the provisions are right now today. But I think that's what this task force is trying to come up with, is we want something to be consistent, and we want to address some of the barriers.
So for me, it would be payment
term, length of contract,
or just payment period, because it's It's the method, it's the timeliness, it's payment altogether. And then it's also admin or indirect cost, which is part of that full recovery of costs. Or maybe we even put payment, full recovery of costs. I don't know. Living wage. Anybody think of anything else?
I've heard a lot of conversation about have the term of the contract being more than just 1 year,
So
Multi-year.
something around
multi-year.
multi-year and COLA, like cost of living adjustment.
Yeah, it's multi-year in terms of also rolling over, you know, a way of rolling over more easily.
Debbie, this is the column of measurement. So the measurement is whether we did it or not.
I know, that's, maybe we need to change the title of our column. Maybe the column is tactics or outcomes.
I think outcomes is a good one.
Outcomes make more sense to me,
Yeah.
but I'm also mindful, is the planning document supposed to have measurements? And like, I totally agree with what I'm reading here, but I might feel a little bit differently in a couple months. We have a lot more presentations.
We do.
Well,
Yeah,
let's
I'm
make that
thinking
one.
on this one. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm thinking we don't want to go too much into the detail of what's in there because that's sort of content rather than, I think from a project plan, more like there is the report. But, you know, we could go into more detail, but I would probably err more on the side of, you know, less detail for the project plan itself. So someone might say, yeah, I don't want to do living, you know, living wages.
All right, so what's the one underneath that? So this is flexibility in contract terms, and it's about contracts. And this is where it specifically talks about multi-year contracts.
I feel like this should be pretty similar to the one above. Amy, do you know, is there a base template to build from for client service, or do you happen to know?
I don't believe, Debbie. I think each agency has their
so.
own, and there's nothing standard.
Okay.
So there's no reason we couldn't take what we wrote above for grants and just change it to for contracts.
The this one is actually easier on the agency side to probably achieve, because we do have contract law that sort of governs this section of our work.
Okay, so that one is shored up. Let's go then to the next one, analyze and create recommendations.
This is about reporting requirements commensurate with funding. Amy, can you go down just a little bit?
Just thinking, instead of proposing language, because that's not our expertise, something about like making the case for limited reporting requirements for grants under 50 grand. I don't know. I'm just sorry. I'm just spitballing here. So I just did propose specific contract reporting, even though I just said I wouldn't. I'm really struggling with this exercise.
As we all did. I think Amy and I spent a whole day just trying to come up with stuff, but we're just trying to get something that everybody can understand and they can give their feedback on.
I understood that we were working on a different table. So that's what I shared feedback on. So I'm a little, I feel like I'm digesting this for the first time.
Okay. But you don't think we're allowed to propose?
I think I'm just getting really stuck on what this document is and its purpose and how it's a helpful tool to us and others and how this will hold us accountable. And I'm mindful that there's 3 members of the committee here. So
Right.
that's what's
I
And
can
making me
Amy,
try to help.
this is our project plan. We're required to have this, right? That's why we're meeting.
Well, it definitely helps guide our group. And so that's why we created the plan, so that we are all clear on how to move forward and the work that it is that we're trying to accomplish. So yes, it's an important tool for us to use, but I don't know if there's room for us to say we don't want it. Is that what you're suggesting, that we just do away with the project plan?
This is
I'm not
Marianne.
suggesting that.
Okay.
Sorry,
I
sorry
just
if that
want to
was
be clear.
sorry.
No, that's okay. That's the purpose, though, is just so that we're all clear and we know the path of how we're moving forward. So as far as measurements and things, we've got to keep track of these and make sure that we accomplish them. So most all of this information came out of the Senate bill. That's how the project plan was put together, where these were the items that were identified in the Senate bill. And so as part of the task force is a sort of project because we have a finite start and finish. And so for us to be able to track and measure to make sure that we're accomplishing what the Senate bill set out, this is our way of tracking that and getting everybody on the same page. Please join in, Debbie.
Sure. I would suggest that the first column where we have goal, that really was lifted right out of the legislation, like Amy said, like, hey, form a task force and go off and do these things. I think that column that we've renamed to outcomes is some preliminary yet tangible expectations, like, we know we have to do what's in the goal, but what will it look like? What would it look like for our report if we did the thing in the goal? And so that's the framework I'm trying to think of it in terms of. I don't know if that's helpful or not.
And
No,
I
it's well
think of
said.
it almost like a map. Here's the thing, how are we going to get there?
Mm.
I appreciate all of that. Thank you.
So going back then here to the line item that we're on creating recommendations and sufficient reporting requirements, how do we want to, what kind of outcomes do we think we want here?
So Felicita, you were saying contract terms, reporting requirements, only required over $50,000.
That was external processing. I'm gonna go back, and if the intention of this column is outcome, then I would say an outcome is changes to current practices on contracts, and this isn't going to be worded correctly, but that there's that there's levels, like not asking for a 100-page report for $5,000. Um, so that there's clear guidance, recommendations, um, and expectations around reporting in alignment with amount. I guess the simple the simple outcome would be change. There's a change to reporting requirements.
So this is specifically about contracts as opposed to grants. So when you're talking about a $5,000, would that be a grant or a contract?
That's a fair question. I'm in the contract row, so I'm thinking about a contract.
Okay. Bettina?
I was just thinking, this is really not a content document, but a project plan for us. For me, it was more about what is our deliverable. But the content of the delivery is not really what we need in the project plan, because that's what the report says. So I was sort of relatively okay in having it very standardized, saying we just have to have these 5 documents or 6 documents that go with whatever the content is. And the measurement, I guess I didn't see it necessarily to the intent of the work group. I saw it more about and just getting the work done on time. And the content would be negotiated as we, as a group, decide what those reports say. So I looked at it slightly different in terms of what this plan is trying to do, that it wasn't about the content, but it was more about the form. And that's why having it relatively short, and brief without the detail, was okay for me. I was still probably more engaged in, who else do we, like what we were going to do, which was the table at the end, where we say, who should we still listen to, because we're currently listening to someone, but we're also saying we need to listen to some more people, like on the equity, and racial justice piece, that we want to do some verifying of our report or our recommendations with some people who we think are important to hear it from before we finalize our final report. So we keep them engaged and their voice keeps going into what we're doing. So that's, so I had a slightly different concept of what this plan is for.
So does this table make sense to you?
I will just add, it's got Bettina and Felicita's comments in there, so they haven't seen each other's comments yet, so we'll have to go through it. But this was, I think, where you focused, Felicita and Bettina. There were a lot of comments here versus throughout the rest of the document, where Marianne focused up top, and the two of you seem to have focused in this area, which is fine. This is the first time you're seeing it, so I don't want everybody to freak out yet.
And same with Mary Ann's feedback, right? That's the first time we're seeing it?
Right.
Okay.
So I don't know if you want to take some time and go back up and finish what we've started up top and further up in the document, or if we want to take a look at this engagement plan. This is really about how we're going to communicate and engage with folks moving forward in the audiences.
So we have about 15 minutes. Let's look at this and then go back up with the time we have left.
Okay. So the comments in purplish color are Bettina, and the green ones are Felicita. So let's just take a look there. So the Racial Justice Council, I just changed that title because it said RJC before. We think that we will communicate with them by email and website updates. When the draft recommendations are ready, again, we'll use the website and direct email. Draft recommendations will be developed by DAS And the sensitivities here are meaningful engagement and communication, values and priorities guiding the work. We don't have dates delivered because we haven't done the work yet, but our expected result is to share feedback on draft recommendations. You have any thoughts on that? Okay, let's go ahead and move to the next line then. Nonprofit is our next audience. Please jump in, Felicita.
Sorry, I didn't do that fast enough. I think just
Oh, you're
to
good.
potentially add to expected results for RJC is I would envision that they provide helpful feedback based on the work they're doing. So it's not just us share feedback. I'm trying to think of the
So that's gonna be ask of them to give feedback.
I think so. That's what makes sense to me. I mean, I would want their feedback considering the work that they're trying to do across the state and the very smart people at that table. So I
So
guess I
then,
just don't want it to read one-sided of like, here's what we came up with. Okay, bye. So
so we're gonna
Yeah,
actually ask them to provide feedback or ask for their feedback.
yeah, and for us to include it potentially, you know, so really we're giving it to them before we finalize. So there's a genuine, you know, request to give us any feedback that the final recommendations are involved, you know, are informed by their feedback.
thank you,
I
Amy.
think that sounds fabulous.
Okay. The next line then for the next audience is the nonprofit. Vehicle of communication is websites, updates, and the NAO. Frequency is ongoing. We think it's a medium level that we would use the website and the NAO communication. Our sources would be meeting notes, materials, and recordings. Those will be delivered online only. Some sensitivities with this group are directly impacted by the changes made, and they are vocal proponents of the changes needed. Expected results are to provide feedback on current experience with contracts and grants with the state, desired changes, and impacts of proposed changes. Oops.
It makes sense to me, you know, just keeping the door open to individuals outside our group.
Okay. Any other comments or feedback on that line? Okay, let's move to state agencies then for that audience. Vehicle of communication is the task force members and state communications. Frequency is ongoing. We will use the website and internal communication channels. Source will be our meeting notes, materials, and recordings. Will be delivered by task force members. Sensitivities are they may need resources to make changes. Expected results are to share feedback on draft recommendations, including potential staffing needs and funds needed.
Can we change that to funding needed?
Maybe is there a better way to do the state agency? This is just my assumption, you know, that there's ways that the state communicates with each other.
Debbie, can you answer that?
Yeah, I'm thinking about it. Part of what I'm worried about is if each agency's task force member goes back to their own agency and kind of gives the summary, the recap, the expectations, we may see inconsistency still. So I'm kind of thinking about, we do have some other forums like we have an all-agency director meeting every week. And so there might be ways that that the task force members would sort of group together and present sort of at an enterprise level as opposed to by agency level.
So we could put that delivered by task force members and or, what did you call it?
Delivered by a task force. Somehow I would like it to be consistent is the word all I can come up with. So the vehicle of communication, is it too specific to say task force members based on a set of talking points or something like that? What I'm worried about is they'll only report back the things that, you know, they think their agency can do. And so
So you were talking about the all agency.
yes.
Could that be a vehicle, that meeting?
Yes. We have several of those. We have all agencies, we have a deputy director. So we have several enterprise. How about all agency meetings and all agency director meetings and other enterprise convenings or something like that?
And then we can take out the task force members as such as the main vehicle. What do you think? So it's,
Yes.
yeah. That makes sense to me. Because the online stuff is still available. You know, people can still look at the online website as well, but it's just more the directed or proactive communication.
So Amy, in the column of, oh, sorry, I see you're working on something else.
That's okay.
I think
is it
that
fair for
one's
me to
okay.
say- Okay, presentations then per approved talking points, or what do you think here for the medium?
I think it's okay. I think leaving it at presentations is good. If we go to the vehicle of communication column and take out task force members and maybe even state communication, because that's more about the who.
That sounds good.
Okay.
And then would the delivery still be made by a task force member? Yes.
I think so,
Potentially.
or a group
Okay.
of task force members.
Okay. Okay. Very good. Okay, let's move to governor's office then. We have the vehicle communication is DAS. DAS would communicate that ongoing through the website. The sources are meeting notes and materials and recordings. Will be delivered by DAS. Sensitivities are many competing priorities. And then what's this? Oh, expected result. Changes made to internal practices and policies to be implemented across agencies and departments, and increased understanding of what nonprofits, I'm not sure, would that be FACE? What nonprofits face?
I think it's FACE.
Elizabeth? Okay. Contracting with the state, yes.
I think my feedback here is one of our task force members is the governor's policy advisor. And so
should they be the vehicle?
I think they'll also rely on DAS, but I would like to see both named in the vehicle column.
Is that Sveta?
Yes. Amy, could you say and governor's office task force member?
On it, done. I was thinking the same thing.
Sweet.
That's scary.
We worked together a long time.
Right.
And then in the other column that says DAS, what is that who's delivering it?
Yes, delivered by DAS.
Okay, so I think it should be the same thing.
Okay.
actually, I want to ask a question about that. How does the task force how does the task force actually feel about there might be nonprofit task force members that would want audience to present to the governor's office. That might
Well-
seem imbalanced to just have the internal people presenting to the internal people.
Can you bring that up when we have our meeting or our agenda
Sure.
meeting or the other meeting? Because that's something we need to talk about. Mercedes might feel very differently, you know.
Yeah. Okay.
And it looks like we have the legislator down there, so we've got them. Yeah.
Yes, legislature, I'm sorry, I can't remember the column names. Vehicle would be the task force, especially legislative reps, and the final report. These would be ongoing engagements from the website, our meeting notes, materials, and recordings. And then this one is delivered by task force, especially the legislative reps. Their sensitivities, are there many competing priorities? And then our expected results are changes made to internal practices and policies to be implemented across agencies and departments, and increased understanding of what nonprofits face contracting with the state.
What do you guys think? I think it's great.
I
Yeah,
wrote
the
it,
last
so.
the last one also, has a funding.
Nice job.
Well, thank you
Funding
guys for
allocation.
spending the time doing that. I think it's great.
Yes, very good.
I think our
Considering-
whole
So-
goal is to move things forward, so I think it's good.
I'm mindful of the table above and that we have 3 minutes left. Amy and Debbie, what is the most effective way to provide feedback? I'm mindful of like moving the tool forward.
Yeah. Amy, do you have a preferred method of getting feedback?
I think what would be great is, I hate to give you homework, but I think folks need some time to digest what we've talked about. And I don't think everyone has had a chance to do that. So I would like to give you another opportunity to do that. If I send out the document with the track changes, I can just show them as a simple markup so that you can see where we're at. But as far as those outcomes, we changed measurements to outcomes. I really think folks need a chance to really absorb it and digest it. Would that be acceptable to send it back with you and give you a little bit of homework to review it? And then you could suggest more changes, additional changes. I have tentatively scheduled another meeting for us next month to regroup. I wasn't sure what we would accomplish today, so I tentatively booked us another meeting. And so we could come back together one last time and then finalize everything, if that sounds agreeable.
And at what point does this project plan, in what form does it get shared with everybody?
It's posted on our website right now as a draft document, so we would finalize it and post it there, the final document. We might need to talk about it in the main meeting. I guess we'll leave that up to Mercedes on how she wants to share the information out. Otherwise, we could include it in our other meeting documents. Go ahead, Felicita, jump in.
I'm just curious for Amy and Debbie, if maybe you could also send us a wonderful example of a project plan, like maybe your favorite project plan, so that I can see what a really strong, great one looks like as a helpful guide. Because I definitely am feeling a little bit lost. Like we're getting there, but I'm feeling lost a little bit. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, we'd be happy to do that.
And I'm super sorry, but I have a 2:00 meeting that's starting, so I'm going to hop out.
I do
See you
also.
later.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.